She sits perfectly still in the courtroom, composed, attentive, taking notes like a student in a lecture hall, not a defendant facing a murder charge. Occasionally, she glances at her attorneys. Occasionally, she adjusts her posture. But there's no trembling, no tears, no visible fear, just calm, the kind of calm that unsettles everyone watching. Her defense painted a familiar picture: a young woman, a violent man, a desperate fight for survival. They told the jury she was the victim here, that Alex Woodworth had attacked her in his car, that he tried to rape her, that she had no choice but to defend herself, that the 16 stab wounds she inflicted to his head, his neck, his scrotum, his sides, were the desperate acts of a terrified woman fighting for her life. And for a moment, her story seemed believable. Because when Ezra McCandless stumbled onto dairy farmer Don Sippel's property on March 22nd, 2018, she looked like a survivor, muddy, bloody, clothing torn, and carved into her forearm, in jagged letters, a single word: boy. She claimed total amnesia, said she couldn't remember how she got there, couldn't remember what happened, only fragments, only terror. But then investigators started looking closer, at the carving on her arm, at the angle of the cuts, at the physical impossibility of someone else inflicting those wounds while she fought back. And everything changed. Keep this detail in mind. That three-letter word carved into her skin, it becomes critical later. This case will challenge everything you think you know about self-defense claims, staged crime scenes, and how far someone will go to protect a lie. Because Ezra McCandless didn't just kill Alex Woodworth. She carved her own wounds. She rehearsed her own trauma. She walked to that farmhouse covered in mud and blood and performed the role of a lifetime. What Alex didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that the woman sitting beside him in that car had already decided how this night would end. He thought he was meeting someone he knew, someone safe. He was wrong. To understand what happened on that muddy road in Springbrook, Wisconsin, you need to understand who Alex Woodworth was and who Ezra McCandless pretended to be. Alex was 23 years old, a part-time substitute teacher, a barista, the kind of person who took whatever work he could find while figuring out his next step. He wasn't wealthy. He wasn't powerful. He was just a young man trying to build a life in rural Wisconsin. Quiet, unassuming. The type who showed up, did his job, and went home. He had no idea he'd become a loose end someone needed to tie up. Ezra McCandless was a different story. She had a boyfriend named Jason. And Jason, to her, was everything: stability, security, a future. He was her meal ticket, and she knew it. But there was a problem. Ezra had been involved with Alex, an affair, a secret, and secrets in small towns have a way of surfacing. Alex knew things. He knew about her lies. He knew the truth about her relationship, and that made him dangerous. Not because he was violent, not because he threatened her, but because he could talk. He could tell Jason everything. He could unravel the careful fiction she had constructed. And Ezra couldn't let that happen. What Alex didn't realize was how far she was willing to go. He thought this was a conversation, maybe an argument, maybe a chance to clear the air. He had no reason to suspect that the woman he was meeting had already made a decision, that she had a knife, that she had a plan. He thought the tension between them would pass, that they'd figure it out like adults. He was wrong. There's a cruel irony here. Alex Woodworth wasn't a threat to anyone. He was a substitute teacher who poured coffee for a living. He didn't have power over Ezra. He didn't control her life. He just knew the truth. And for Ezra McCandless, that was enough. Knowing the truth made him a target. Being honest made him a liability. The man who could expose her lies would never get the chance. It started as an ordinary Thursday afternoon, March 22nd, 2018, Springbrook, Wisconsin. Rural farmland, quiet roads. the kind of place where nothing ever happens. Ezra and Alex were in a car together, her car. A conversation that was supposed to clear the air, settle things, move on. But Ezra had no intention of moving on. She had brought a knife, a kitchen knife, a steak knife, something from her own vehicle, not his, not something grabbed in panic, something she had access to before this ever started. The attack didn't happen inside the car, not the way she would later claim. It happened outside, on that muddy road, in the middle of nowhere, where no one could hear, where no one could help. She stabbed him once, twice. She kept going 16 times. Head, neck, scrotum, sides, anywhere and everywhere she could reach. Not the frantic slashing of someone fighting off an attacker. The repeated, deliberate plunging of a blade into a body that had already stopped fighting back.
What I start doing is defending myself. As Alex is grabbing me, I started stabbing him anywhere and everywhere I could. I didn't know what was happening. I just needed to get away.
But here's what the evidence showed. Alex had no weapon. Alex wasn't the aggressor. Alex was the one who ended up dead on a muddy road with 16 stab wounds, while Ezra walked away with nothing but superficial cuts. She described one wound in chilling detail.
I remember as he grabbed my hair, he was holding it very tight, and he was pulling my face towards him. And I remember that's when I had stabbed him inside the head.
Inside the head. Let that sink in. And then she walked, muddy road, cold air, blood drying on her clothes. She found a quiet spot, took the knife, carved 3 letters into her own arm, B-O-Y, slowly, deliberately, creating evidence, manufacturing trauma. She destroyed Alex's phone, not dropped, not lost, destroyed, deliberately. Then she made her way to Don Sippel's dairy farm, knocked on the door, and performed the role of a lifetime. The damsel in distress, the survivor, the victim. She was none of those things. Don Sippel didn't know what to make of the woman at his door. Muddy, bloody, clothing torn, shaking. She looked like she had crawled out of a nightmare. And carved into her forearm, in rough, jagged letters, was a single word, B-O-Y. She said she couldn't remember what happened. Said she had no idea how she got there. Fragments, confusion, trauma. Sippel called the police. When officers arrived, Ezra told them a story. She'd been attacked. A man named Alex. He tried to rape her. She fought back. Self-defense. She barely escaped with her life. She played the part perfectly. The trembling voice, the vacant stare, the wounded arm held out like proof of her suffering. But investigators noticed something almost immediately. The mud on her clothes, the mud on her shoes. It didn't match a random escape through the woods. It matched a specific road, a road not far from Sippel's property. Officers followed the trail, found her footprints, found the path she had walked.
You described to me that yesterday that you walked straight down a road.
Yeah.
And there was mud on you, and not too far from Don's house we found a mud road.
Okay.
Well, we followed the mud road and we saw your footprints.
Okay.
Okay. Why would we find your footprints down the mud road?
They followed those footprints, and they found Alex Woodworth, 23 years old, substitute teacher, barista, lying dead on a muddy road in rural Wisconsin with 16 stab wounds, no weapon in his hand, no defensive wounds on Ezra's body, no evidence that he had ever posed a threat to anyone. His phone was destroyed, not cracked from a fall, not lost in a struggle, deliberately smashed. Someone didn't want that phone recovered. Someone didn't want those messages read. Ezra claimed amnesia, said she couldn't remember the details, said the trauma had blocked everything out. But there was a problem with that story, a medical problem. To have genuine traumatic amnesia, you typically need a head injury. blunt force trauma, something that disrupts memory formation. Ezra had no head injury. None. Her cuts were superficial, self-inflicted, carefully placed, where they would look dramatic but cause no real damage. The story she told didn't match the body she presented. And that carving on her arm, B-O-Y. Investigators looked at the angle, the depth, the direction of the cuts. They started asking questions, hard questions. What detectives didn't know yet was how quickly Ezra's careful performance would collapse. How one simple question about that three-letter word would unravel everything she had built. The evidence was already waiting. The footprints, the phone, the wounds that didn't add up, all of it pointing in one direction, toward her. Remember that carving on her arm. B-O-Y. 3 letters that were supposed to prove Alex Woodworth was a monster. 3 letters that were supposed to seal her story forever. But here's what destroyed the defense completely. Investigators examined the wound, the angle, the depth, the direction of the cuts, and they realized something. If Alex had carved that word while attacking her, while she fought back, while she struggled, the cuts would look different. The angles would be inconsistent. There would be signs of movement, resistance, chaos. Instead, the cuts were clean, deliberate, controlled. The kind of carving you can only do when no one is fighting you, when you're alone, when you have time. They asked Ezra directly, and under minimal pressure, she admitted it. She carved it herself. Not Alex, not her attacker, her. She took that knife after killing a man and sat down somewhere quiet and carved a word into her own flesh to make herself look like a victim. Think about that for a moment. The calculation required, the coldness, the planning. The defense claimed she was fighting for her life. The evidence showed she was staging a crime scene. The defense claimed Alex attacked her inside the car. The physical evidence proved the attack happened outside, on that muddy road, in the open air. The defense claimed she was covered in wounds from the struggle. Medical examiners found only superficial, self-inflicted cuts. No defensive wounds, no bruising consistent with being overpowered, nothing. The defense claimed Alex's phone was lost or broken in the chaos. Investigators determined it was deliberately destroyed. Someone wanted those messages gone. Someone wanted to control the narrative. The defense claimed traumatic amnesia explained her fragmented memory. Doctors found no head injury, no physical basis for memory loss, nothing but a convenient excuse.
I'm afraid he's going to kill me. I'm afraid he's going to kill me because he has a knife. And I'm afraid that he's going to take whatever he wants and he's just going to finish this.
Her voice was steady when she said those words, rehearsed, like someone reciting lines they had practiced, not the fractured, trembling account of genuine trauma. The polished performance of someone who knew exactly what story she needed to tell.
My mind is running through his words that he deserves this. My mind is running through all of the possibilities of what he could want, of what he's going to take.
He deserves this. Those 3 words. Prosecutors argued Ezra wasn't describing Alex's thoughts. She was describing her own. She believed Alex deserved to die. He knew her secrets. He could destroy her relationship with Jason. He could take away everything she had built. So she took everything from him first. 16 stab wounds, a destroyed phone, a carved arm, and a story that fell apart the moment anyone looked closely. The evidence didn't just contradict her account, it exposed her. The footprints in the mud, the angles of the cuts, the absence of any physical proof supporting her claims. All of it waiting. All of it pointing at the woman who claimed to be a victim. She wasn't a victim. She was a killer who almost got away with it. The trial brought everything into the open. Every lie, every contradiction, every carefully constructed detail that crumbled under scrutiny. And then came Jason, the man Ezra had killed for. The relationship she had protected at any cost. The future she had murdered to preserve. He took the stand, and what happened next would haunt Ezra McCandless more than any evidence.
And that was pregnant by you?
I do not know.
The paternity question, asked in open court, in front of everyone. Jason didn't claim her, didn't defend her, didn't acknowledge any future with her at all. He distanced himself. Publicly. Completely. The man she had killed to keep was gone. Witnesses described Ezra's reaction, the mask slipping, the rage barely contained behind her eyes. She had eliminated Alex Woodworth to protect this relationship. And now, in front of a packed courtroom, that relationship meant nothing. Throughout the trial, Ezra maintained her composure, took notes, watched testimony with the detached interest of an observer rather than a defendant. When victim impact statements were read, when Alex's family described the son they lost, the future that was stolen, she sat largely expressionless. No tears, no visible remorse, just that same unsettling calm. The jury deliberated. They reviewed the evidence, the self-inflicted carving, the impossible angles, the destroyed phone, the 16 stab wounds on a man who had no weapon. The verdict came back: guilty. First-degree intentional homicide. Not self-defense, not manslaughter, not a tragic accident. Intentional, premeditated, murder. At sentencing, Ezra finally spoke.
I want to say how sorry I am that they have lost their son. But sorry doesn't cut it in my mind. That word is not enough and never will be enough for this loss. And I recognize that. I loved Alex very much. And I also feel a great loss. And I'm so sorry.
She said she loved him. The man she stabbed 16 times. The man whose phone she destroyed. The man she left dead on a muddy road while she walked to a farmhouse and carved lies into her own skin. The judge wasn't moved. Life in prison. Parole eligibility after 50 years. Not for months. Not for years. Decades. There's a cruel irony in how this ended. Ezra McCandless styled herself as a survivor, a damsel in distress, a woman who escaped a monster. She carved that narrative into her own flesh. She performed it at a stranger's doorstep. She repeated it to every detective who would listen. But she was the monster. She was the predator. And the man she killed, the 2-3-year-old substitute teacher who poured coffee for a living, never had a chance. The evidence remains. The interrogation tapes where her story collapsed. The photographs of that carved arm. The medical reports showing no defensive wounds. The muddy footprints leading from a body to a farmhouse. All of it preserved, all of it waiting. Alex Woodworth was supposed to have a future, a career, a life. Ezra McCandless took all of it. And now she has 50 years to sit with what she's done.